The other day I did a video on why Diablo 4 is dying and what is killing it. And basically, the video went on to say that everything that's being introduced in the game is an empty shell of nothing. And there's no substance in the gameplay and really what the purpose of the game is for D4. And I got a lot of comments, and a couple stood out to me. One in particular was about, if you're gonna, Sammy, if you're gonna talk about Diablo 4 and all the problems, at least you should, talk about what your opinion would be for some of the solutions. Now, I have over 100 videos on Diablo 4 on my YouTube channel, and I have mentioned what I think should be introduced in Diablo 4 and solutions to fix the game. And let me be honest, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. And I'm not the only one that's saying what should be done to the game to improve it. It's not rocket science. There's games already out there that adopt similar methodologies when it comes to what should be done in the game. So in this video, I'm going to not just talk the talk, I'm going to walk the walk, and I'm going to reintroduce in more detail what I believe should be introduced into Diablo 4. So once and for all, this game could be playable and enjoyable for a long time. I hope you'll join me and stick around. We'll see you on the other side. Now, before we get into my recommendations, I want to set kind of some ground rules for what's shaping what I'm going to suggest be put in the game. These are the rules that I had in my mind when I was thinking about what to put in the game. Number one, I'm trying to come up with solutions that are easy to implement and are utilizing kind of the structure of what already is in Diablo 4, if that makes any sense. I want to try to make this as doable as possible. I can come up with pie in the sky ideas, but if it's going to take 5 years for the Diablo 4 dev team to do it, then what's the point? There's going to be no player base left. So I'm trying to play with what I already have in Diablo 4 to a certain degree. I hope that makes sense. I want to do something and provide recommendations that I feel aren't really that difficult to implement. I'm not saying they're all doable in the next month, but I feel the recommendations that I'm about to provide to you in this video are short to mid-term goals that can be done in the next 30 days to 6 months, probably even 3 months, really, if you put pen to paper, so to speak, to this. After all, there's a ton of people working on Diablo 4, and I don't see any reason why it can't. So without further ado, here is what I would put in Diablo 4. So my first recommendation addresses one of the biggest elephants in the room, and that's something that everybody has been complaining about since day one, and that's the lack of end game. There's no motivation. There's nothing to work towards. This game really lacks end game content. So my first improvement for D4 would be obviously improvements to the end game. So how would I do that? I would recommend a linear progression in the game. What do I mean by that? So currently in Diablo 4, we have 4 world tiers, and really it's just a level and gear check. All you need to do currently in Diablo 4 when it comes to progressing through world tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 is you need to level up, get better gear, and then complete the capstone, and you're good to go, and you can progress to the next world tier. In essence, all you're really doing is doing the same stuff over and over, And as soon as you get to the appropriate level and you have the appropriate gear, you can run the capstone and you progress to the next tier. Really, not much thought goes into it. You're just continuing to run the same content over and over until you get to the level cap and gear cap that you need to do in order to complete the capstone and go to the next world tier. I would suggest a linear progression in the game. So for example, world tier 1, you would start in world tier 1. There would be world tier 1 quests that you would have to do, and it's basically taking you through different cities in Sanctuary, and at the end of these quests and areas, you will fight a boss in order to go to the next tier. You beat the boss, you go to World Tier 2. And World Tier 2 would follow the same structure where there is quests that need to be done. And then at the end, you fight a boss and vice versa. And that's how you progress through World Tier 1, World Tier 2, World Tier 3, World Tier 4. And we have an example of that in several games, but the one I'll reference, and I'm going to be referencing this game a lot, is in Diablo 2 Resurrected. There's the same linear progression where you have 5 acts. Each act has a boss at the end, and once you beat that, you go to the next act. I'm suggesting the same linear progression. And the boss fights have to have, number one, they could utilize the current new bosses that they introduced in season 2. So they already have the bosses, so they can utilize the bosses that they already have. However, they need to make a major modification. The boss fights at the end of each world tier need to be Elden Ring, Lost Ark, Black Desert Online-esque, quality-wise, challenge-wise, and rewarding-wise. Not like it currently is right now today in Diablo 4, where the boss fights are a joke, and it literally takes 1 second to melt each new boss. It needs to be similar to the Elden Ring, Dark Souls, Lost Ark, Black Desert Online quality in difficulty, in challenge, and in rewards. If they do that, this game gets elevated to another level. Now, I do want to say this is just another footnote. If the intentions of the Diablo 4 dev team are indeed, like we heard in a data mine leak several months ago, if part of their intentions is to add raids to Diablo 4, and I'm a huge advocator of raids in games. I think they add an element to a game that is so much fun. So I definitely would support it. But if they have intentions already of adding raids, then I would suggest, obviously, that they do so. And I would make it an addition with the annual expansion. And these raids would have special loot, special gear and drops, special rewards, only attainable in raids. And again, the raids would have a level cap and all this kind of stuff. Just like, for example, the Destiny 2 style of raiding, where there's a level cap. You really need to have a really min-max character to run. It will also improve and promote the social aspect of Diablo 4, which is non-existent. We're going to get to the improvements of the social part of Diablo 4 later on in my improvements. But if they plan on including raids, then number one, I highly applaud them, but it has to be like a Destiny 2 kind of quality and system where people are working towards not only being able to run the new raid, but to also beat it. And Destiny 2 even took it further, where they made the base raid when they first introduced it, and then sometimes they would add challenges to the raid and modifiers to the raid and reward the gamers that completed those challenges and gave them different rewards. My point is, there's so much you could do with adding a raid to the game that adds so much more end game content and people and gamers to work towards and grind for. So I applaud that. Now, obviously, if they have no intentions of putting raids in D4, then obviously negate everything I just said. But I think the linear progression in adding that in the game, in the current world tier format, all they would really need to do is add quests that in each world tier 1 to 4, and then a final boss fight, which is a gear check and a level check in order for them, the player, to go to the next world tier. And again, the boss fight needs not to be like how currently boss fights are. It needs to be elevated to something challenging and rewarding, like the Elden Ring boss fights, the Lost Ark boss fights, and like Black Desert Online ish. So that is how I suggest they fix the end game content. Number 2 fix, and it's another elephant in the room, and that's itemization. And I would suggest that they rehaul itemization in the following manner. Number 1, they need to redesign classes and skills to make all classes viable, not just a selected few classes and builds like we see today. In other games, every class is viable. There are many options when it comes to how you can build classes. You look at Lost Ark, you look at Diablo 2, you look at Last Epoch, I can go on and on, Path of Exile. These are all games that make customization of classes and skills unique to the gamer that's playing that class. And not only is it customizable, but it can complete any content in the game. This is what Diablo 4 is lacking, and this is what Diablo 4 needs to do. They need to redesign all the classes and skills to make sure that all of them are viable. All of them can complete all of the end game and all the content in the game for that matter. So a complete redesign of classes and skills to make sure that all of them are viable in the game. Another thing in order to rehaul itemization is they need to introduce crafting so we can get good loot. So when good loot drops, we can craft, keep that item and craft as we progress through the journey of Sanctuary and as we progress through the 4 world tier levels. This provides incentive to grind and customization in the game. You know, the Diablo 4 dev teams already mentioned that they want to improve itemization, and they said that in season 4 they're going to introduce the improvements to itemization, not fix it, but introduce it. And so the willingness is there. They've already said it, and they already said they want us to keep loot and have a journey with that loot. So in order to do that, they need to have crafting in the game. Now, I referenced the data mine leak several months ago, and in that data mine leak, I'm going to reference it again. They refer to the possibility of ruins being introduced into Diablo 4. That is a Diablo 2 mechanic where we get ruins drops and we can make ruin worlds in our gear. I don't know if that's where they're going, but some sort of crafting, and however it's done, whether it's ruins or whether it's some other way, introducing crafting in the game where we actually care about what drops and getting good bases and keeping those good bases for our gear, so because we know we can craft something good out of it, that methodology will enhance a lot of things in Diablo 4. So introducing crafting is something I highly, highly suggest, because it really goes hand in hand with improving itemization in the game. And it eliminates a lot of the frustration with the player base, and it's very widespread. And that is, I don't even look at my loot anymore. There's so much of it, and it's all useless. So having crafting and redesigning classes and skills, this all goes hand in hand in improving itemization in the game. This one is a big one. You have this in the game, and you are now putting some purpose into what we're doing every day in Sanctuary. And lastly, I'd like to address quality of life. Now, there are many more improvements that need to be addressed in this game, but I'm going to keep it to 3 because I don't want this to be a 200-hour video. But my last improvement and recommendation for the game is improvements to quality of life. And I suggest the following be made in order to improve the quality of life. Number 1, I'd like to see a PoE style stash system. And heck, they could even make it purchasable. And I think there'd be an appetite for that. Now, personally, I think they should not make it purchasable. It should be included in the game, and we, the players, should be able to use our currency in game, the gold that we earn by grinding, to add stash, customize stash, etc., etc. Path of Exile has a very good system. Now, in Path of Exile, you need to purchase stash tabs, and they have customizable stash tabs, but PoE is free to play, so they can get away with it. Diablo 4, you purchase the game. So this is where the difference is. I personally think in-game currency, the gold, should be the currency used in order to tie the two. So we can use currency, the gold, in-game to purchase additional stash tabs, and we already have that, but we're limited to the amount that we can buy. I would take that further and make it purchasable in-game through the gold, and add the possibility of adding customizable tabs, not just renaming them and adding colors or picking from the 10 icons that already exist by default in the game. I'm talking full-fledged customizable, something for elixirs, something, everything that's in the game, we should have a stash tab, and we should be able to use the gold currency in the game to do that. They've already made improvements with the search functionality and the querying of the stash, so that's great. I would just further take that a step forward and add it so that we can add more and customizable tabs. I would also suggest improvements of quality of life vis-a-vis introduction of a pet or companion. They can pick whichever one they want, and this pet or companion does the following: it picks up loot, so our drops, our gold that falls on the ground when we're grinding. It gives access to stash while we're out in the Sanctuary universe, in order for us to either store what we picked up or whether we want to trash an item. It gives us access to our stash, so we don't have to constantly port back and forth to a city to dump everything. It's a lot of time wasting. Players just want to grind and kill stuff. So the pet or companion needs to be able to give us access to our stash so we can continue to grind and keep our inventory empty. Also, these pets or companions should be able to provide us with unique skill upgrades, little skill upgrades, not major. And Lost Ark adopts this methodology where your pet gives you a little boost. It could be 5% health, 5%, whatever. But the point is, luck gives you a little buff when you equip that pet, and it's accompanying you while you're grinding. So I would suggest the same style that Lost Ark uses with their pet, and this would be a huge improvement in the quality of life and players not having to go in and out of town to get rid of their drops. I would also include the introduction of solo self-found mode. Again, many games already have this. Path of Exile has it. Diablo 2 has it. And I think a lot of players would gravitate to this mode. It's a very, very popular mode in a lot of games. And one of the reasons why I like playing solo self-found, SSF mode, is the fact that you're able to modify the world and difficulty in SSF. And you know what? A lot of people get a lot of gratification by not being able to trade, and everything that they have is because they earned it. So there's a lot of players that like that sense of accomplishment. So I would introduce SSF mode in Diablo 4. And obviously, another quality of life, and I just mentioned it, trading. This has to improve drastically. I know there's third parties out there already, but they need to somehow, Diablo 4 needs to have their own trading system in game. Another element that players would really like and enjoy, especially if you tie that to if you introduce crafting to the game. Now players are crafting items and keeping items and grinding for that item in order to craft that meta gear so they can sell and get gold in order to purchase other items in the game. Again, there are games out there, and I reference, Path of Exile has an amazing trading foundation in the game through their website, and it's very popular, and a lot of people play the game just to make those unique items and trade them to make the currency in order for them to be able to buy what they need for their class. So trading needs to be hugely improved in Diablo 4. And lastly, on the improvements of quality of life, they need to improve the social aspect of the game, or because right now there's none, absolutely none. So grouping up needs to be improved, and that's the voice chat, the accessibility of inviting people to your group and joining groups needs to be improved. So grouping up as a whole, that whole structure needs to be rehauled and make it very easy. And there's a lot of games out there that it's very easy to do. So there's a lot of models out there that they could take and reference from. And then clans and guilds. Although it is existent in Diablo 4, it's very vanilla right now. Very vanilla to set up a clan, guild, whatever you want to call it. It's very like that. Again, needs to have a team rehaul it and make it real. And again, they already know, and they are like, wow, they can take reference from their own friggin' game, World of Warcraft, which has a huge clan and guild structure in the game. So they have something in-house that they can model and reference from. Okay, so those are my top 3. Now, I do want to mention a couple of things. There are a lot more things that need to be addressed in this game. However, I do want to mention one thing. These 3, to me, are the top problems in the game right now, and addressing them really puts a lot of meat on the bone for this game. Like, taking these recommendations that I've just stated in this video, if those were actually introduced into D4, like, I personally think it would be a tremendous lift to the game. It takes out a lot of sentiment that's in the player base right now. The game is boring. I'm doing the same thing over and over, yada, 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 right? Adding more endgame, making the progression in D4 linear, and utilizing the current 4 world tiers, adding quests and a boss fight at the end in order to go to the next world tier, making each boss fight at the end of the world tier different than what a boss fight is in Diablo 4 right now, making it Elden Ring-esque, Dark Souls-esque, something like that. Those kind of boss fights, the ones where sometimes you die 10 times before you beat it. Now, I'm not saying they need to make it that difficult. However, there does have to be a higher level of difficulty when it comes to the current boss fights. And they need to drop items that are useful for us. So that end game solution, I think, would be huge. Now, another bonus recommendation is raids. Personally, I love raids. I think they should introduce them in Diablo 4. They can do one a year. They can include it with the expansion, which would further, I think, boost their sales with the expansions, because they're not only doing an expansion, but they're adding a raid. If that's not viable, then they could do it 6 months after the expansion, whatever. That's not the point. The point is raids add such an element of endgame content to a game. And I'm referring to Destiny 2, where I played a lot of Destiny 2, and raids was a major part of that. Gearing up for it, leveling up for it, like, it provides so much repeatability in the game and a purpose. So I'm a huge proponent of raids, but that's a bonus. If they want to do that or not, I don't know. But end game, and then itemization, obviously crafting, making class balances and skills, all of them viable. I don't want to hear rogue, barbarian. That's all we hear now, right? Yes, every once in a while, another, bone spear necromancer or the ball lightning sorceress, that pops up every once in a while. But for the most part, all we hear about is the barbarian and the rogue. So we need to spread the love across all the classes and balance them. And you get that through adding customization in the game and us being able to hold on to gear and craft better gear that's suitable to our class and play style. So again, itemization is a big one that needs to be addressed. And by adding the recommendations that I said in the prior segment, I think, again, adds something to the game that is substance and meaning and purpose. And that's all the player base wants. And then all the things I said about quality of life. So to me, there are many more things that need to be fixed, but those 3 take this game to another level. So let me know what you think. Did I miss anything? Am I off my rocker? Are these not the big 3 items? What are your thoughts? What's your take? I want you to jump into our comment section. We have a lot of great debates in there, so I would love to hear your feedback and comments. And if you could find it in your heart to like, comment, and subscribe to this video, I would greatly appreciate it. And thanks for watching, everybody. And as always, we'll hope to see you next time. Take care.